in order to have a successful job, you have to understand how to manage it. What's the most important to these clients? Is it timeline? Is it budget? Is it quality? What are you managing to? Welcome back, everyone, to another midweek Modern Craftsman, where I have a cold this week. My kids got me sick. I've been going nonstop, working, sports, kids events, everything else. Just, I'm run down. I got sick. So my already terrible, monotonous, aberrant voice is even worse. I'm sorry for that, but you're just going to have to deal with it. I was going through YouTube comments recently, and there was, let's see how you say this. I'm not sure. It's the real Nosferatu, Nosferatu. And he or she said, well, I'm glad this helps you guys too, because I love to hear from you guys. I'm a 28-year-old carpenter in Long Island, New York, and it's very hard to get any contractors to talk about the business side. The GC I work for now never brings up how much anything costs, margins, etc. I really appreciate how open you are, because I would never learn the inside ball stuff you guys discuss without the two of you. This got me thinking about margins, about business. Somebody else had commented that they would like to learn a little bit more about the estimating side of things. And I figured it went hand in hand. I also had a consulting call this morning with a really nice guy in the suburbs of Boston. And I was talking about my estimating process and the way that I work, and that it's T&M and how I track costs, how I budget. And I figured I haven't done really a business related podcast in a while. And it got me thinking about my process, the job that I'm now on now, how I'm invoicing for that, how I'm tracking my numbers, how I created a budget for that, and everything else. So I wanted to dig into that today to hopefully give you guys a little bit more insight as to how I manage my projects to ensure that I'm making money on every job. So let me pull up my spreadsheet here. Real quickly, the job is a screened-in porch addition where we're tying into the existing house. There was a variance for the work getting done. We had an architect on the job. I had pre-construction on the job. And at this point, I am executing the work contract aspect of the job. Concrete patio is getting poured this week, which for me is not ideal, because then I have to finish all of the trim out post framing on top of concrete. But it was helping my mason out. We're getting close to the winter months. The flat work has to get in. I wanted to push it until later in November, where I was going to be away and I'd be a little further into the job, but it is what it is. I can throw some plywood down, let it cure, and then work over top of it. It's not as though I have so many sub trades out there working on top of the finished concrete. So not ideal for me. Might create some efficiency issues with me, but I understand my budget. I understand my numbers. I will make this work. So first off, this job, let's discuss how this all happened. It's a return customer of mine. She's been wanting this for a while. I've been busy. I've had a million things to do. Finally was able to get going on it, figure out what she wants. She sent me some inspiration. I connected her with the architect. We came up with plans. We submitted it to the town. I was within all the zoning constraints, and they said we needed a variance. They said we needed a variance because the existing house was not up to today's zoning code, the bylaws of the zoning ordinances. So the setbacks on the house, the side setbacks, all the lot coverages and everything was fine, but the side setbacks of the house were too close. So at some point, this house was built, I believe, in the 50s. At some point, they changed the zoning ordinance, and now the setback of the house was not what it was supposed to be. So say it was supposed to be 12 feet, it was only 10 feet. So they wanted me to get a variance for this, even though the screened-in porch that we were putting on the back of the house was within those zoning limitations and set to today's code and zoning regulations. They said because we were attaching it to a non-conforming structure, that we are exacerbating a non-conforming structure. So I was unaware that I was going to have to get a variance for this. So that was an added cost right off the bat that the client, I just didn't know. My architect said that we may run into it. I briefed her that we may run into it, but I didn't know if we would until we submitted. So we submitted the permits, and they said, yeah, we need a zoning variance for this project. So bumped our schedule a little bit, got everything in order. At this point, I needed a new survey because the zoning survey or the survey of the property had to be within 1 year. So the client now had to get an additional survey. None of this was included in the pre-construction or the budget. This was all before the work contract. So I aligned a surveyor to get out and survey the house. I got a hold of 2 surveyors. It was between schedule, price, scope, and it just so happened that the less expensive surveyor who had already surveyed the house could turn around that survey quicker than a new surveyor that I hadn't used before. So because we were already behind the 8 ball and the job was going a little bit more expensive than anticipated, we went that route. I had a pre-construction agreement with her to get to permitting. I budgeted a certain amount of time for that, which included the zoning, which included the architect, which included all the communication, submitting permitting, filling out tech sheets, all of that stuff. So I was paid for my time to get this job to permitting and go to permitting, and we created a budget for this project. Let me pull that up right now. So the first thing I have to do when she comes to me and she wants a job done is, how much do you think this porch is going to cost? So I looked at the size of it initially, what her inspiration was, what she wanted. I don't really know what it is, but I said, okay, well, typically a deck's around this price per square foot based on your needs. And we got to put a roof on it. We got to trim it out. So let's 2x that. So that's where we came up with our budget. And then we started the design aspect of this, understanding that I'm going to be making up how much this job costs for the better part of this process, and even during construction, until I really have a better understanding of the work that's put in place. So we added some scope. We added some other things that we were doing. We're going to replace some siding on the house. We extended the patio. We removed patio. There's a bunch of work that got added. And we started developing this budget based on her needs and the design that was put in place. The first iterations of the design were not quite what she wanted, so we redid that, which added a little bit to the design aspect, but nothing crazy. I would rather spend a little bit more in the design up front and get it right, and spend less money on the back end. Or when you're spending all that money, just be happy and content with it. So once the job and the design was completed and we had our zoning approvals, at that point, I really wanted to dial in costing. So I have a budget worksheet where, if you have the pre-construction course, you have that budget worksheet. Nothing fancy. I made it up. It has all of the construction divisions, and I just go through on every job, right? And I take these plans and I sit down and I go through all these divisions I have: general requirements, permit fee, engineering design, pressure washing, temp sanitary facilities, dumpster for concrete, protection, site work, excavation, on and on and on. And I look at the design and I look at the project and I start putting numbers to those things. And these at this point are wags and swags, wild ass guesses, scientific wild ass guesses. They're based on quantities. And this is somewhat of my second iteration of the budgeting at this point, right? Because I did this to ensure that our napkin numbers were right, throwing numbers at her. We weren't that far off. But then as the design progresses, you're able to refine that. So I go through this spreadsheet. I look at the design, I look at the scope of work, and I start putting numbers to this. And those numbers may be based on unit costs. They could be based on the time that I think it's going to take, if we're self-performing, if there's markups. But I go through all of the plans and I just go through line item by line item, and I look and I say, okay, landscaping. What do we have to do with landscaping on this job? I have grading of the backyard. I have seed. I have site prep, clearing, removal of existing plant material. I'm going to need 6 tons of blended screen topsoil. And I'm going to have to put a tri-fescue blend seed with a germinating seed down. I'm going to need starter fertilizer. So I look and I say, how much is that going to cost me? How much time that's going to take? And I put a number on it. I look at crushed concrete. I need 10 tons of crushed concrete delivered. What's that going to cost me? And then I look at excavating the footings. I'd write a scope of work in: labor to excavate 8 quantity concrete footings, sonotubes, crushed stone, footings for stairs. Assume a day with 2 guys. Assume no rock or no stone, and standard digging. So I'm putting all of these clauses in to protect myself, because I've gone to dig before and I've hit stone. And it's taken to 3x what I thought it was going to. So I'm putting an exact quantity of time, an exact cost associated with that, and an explicit scope to protect myself for when the work gets done. Place the footings. I have how many bags of concrete I'm going to be using for these 8 footings. Sonotubes, spread footings, all those costs. I have drainage, rental equipment, rental material, demolition, concrete, right? I assume that we're removing 20 tons of concrete. We ended up removing 30 because there was additional concrete brick footing material underneath the slab in the backyard that was unaccounted for in my cost proposal. So I have a note there that we removed and disposed of and recycled an additional 10 tons of concrete. So my dumpster number for concrete is inaccurate now. The labor to remove the concrete is inaccurate now. And we also had to bring in fill to account for all of the extra material that we removed. So all of these things help me create a really accurate cost budget for these projects. And that's what I'm trying to do. I understand that I'm going to walk into a job the day I start it, and it's not going to go exactly according to plan. I understand that my budget is made up of wags and swags. I understand that there's no perfect science to this, but I want to be able to communicate that to my clients that, hey, I'm putting a budget together, but I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know if it's going to rain. I don't know that we're going to run into 10 additional tons of concrete. I don't know that we're not going to be able to get the lumber delivery in the backyard because the equipment can't turn that way to get it in. So I'm going to have to hand offload all of the pressure treat and all of the framing lumber into the backyard. Things maybe I can account for. Maybe I should have. Maybe I forgot. Maybe I missed it. Maybe there's extra I accounted for on something else that I didn't use that I can use to cover the cost of unaccounted for. But I'm always just trying to put a spreadsheet together, put a comprehensive scope together, a line item budget, and a schedule to give me the most accurate costing, scheduling, and budget that I can going into this job so that it affords me an opportunity to manage this job to meet my clients' expectations. Does that mean that I'm going to spend $1,000 exactly on transportation, staging, delivery, diesel, and gas, right? Is that I'm going to spend $1,000 on fuel? Maybe I spend $1,100. Maybe I spend $600. But I'm going to keep track of what my fuel costs are. And if this client wanted to spend X amount, I'm going to make sure that all of these numbers wind up being close to X amount on that job. That's not to say that every single item in this budget is going to be exactly as anticipated, but I'm creating a budget that allows me and affords me to be able to manage this budget as well as I can to meet my clients' expectations. There's a lot of unforeseens. I put a contingency in there. If I'm making an assumption, I note those assumptions. I do not, if there's no scope, if there's no spec written, I write a spec, I write a scope. And the reason is because I want something to fall back on. If there's no electrical scope from my electrician and I say, hey, this is what it costs to rough in this porch, right? It's $6,000, but I don't have a scope from him. What happens when what he bid on the plans or what he does is different? I then cannot go to my client and say, hey, you know what? We assumed that we were going to put 3 GFIs in and there was going to be 2 fans and we were putting a sub panel for the heaters and there was extra cost associated with that because we ended up having to do more work. We put in 8 GFIs because the ones on the house were waterlogged and damaged and they weren't working. When we got into your panel, we found that some of the wiring was not up to code and they had undersized wiring in larger breakers. So we had to replace all of that. I don't have a leg to stand on with my clients if I don't have an explicit and specific comprehensive scope of work from every subtrade and every single line item in this budget for this job. So if my electrician runs into these things and my client says, hey, well, he had the plans, he should have known, he visited the job, he should have known, and I don't have an exact scope that I'm bidding, he kind of has to eat that, or I have to eat that, or I have to make my customer very unhappy by saying, hey, this is an additional cost. So as I'm going through my line item budget, I'm going to note everything that may be a potential issue for me, that may be a concern. And even as I'm going through and I'm billing, I'm noting what was more, what was less. So I'm looking at this right now, right? One of the things is having my equipment, my excavator on site. There was an extra day of concrete demo. I noted that on there. If the job is more expensive than anticipated and it's a bunch of these little costs coming together, I understand why. It's because this was more. It's because there was an extra demolition fee. It's because the framing didn't work out the way that they want. The tie-in didn't work out because what was designed on paper didn't actually work in the field and we had to make a change. But I have an option to do that. I can either borrow money from within the budget, I can have a conversation with the client, they can spend more money, or I could possibly reduce some scope on the back end or create some efficiencies within the job to get that done still for the price. And maybe it's not the same scope of work that we bid, but I'm still meeting their program, which maybe their program's money. Maybe their program's just getting it done when you said you were going to get it done. Or maybe their program is just having it be the nicest, most badass screened in porch edition. And they don't really care about how long it takes or what it costs. They just want what they want. So you have to understand, in order to have a successful job, you have to understand how to manage it. What's the most important to these clients? Is it timeline? Is it budget? Is it quality? What are you managing to? I'm going through the scope of work right now. I have a rear storm door. I have an allowance in there for that. I need to determine which one she wants. That's something that I didn't have answers for, that I didn't have a spec for, that I didn't have a scope for. So I either need to write a spec and put a number on there, or I need to know I don't have a spec. I need to determine that still. So the number that I have in there is going to cover me pretty close for what I think she wants, but it's not 100%. I go and I take all my specs from my subcontractors. I put them in there. If there's materials that she's considering possibly pulling from the scope, like the porch heaters, like the skylights, they are noted in a different color font to make sure, hey, if you want to reduce the price of this job, here's some things that we can pull out to make this job fit your needs and your program and still meet your expectations. I have notes in here that I'm going through when I'm looking at the deck and I'm looking at the size of the boards that we have, right? And which direction the boards are going. And if we don't want a picture frame in the center, or we don't want a border in the center, that I need to make sure that this deck is less than 16 feet wide, or else we're going to have to piece it. So there's just little things that I'm noting that, yeah, may be common sense. But if I don't have that conversation with the client and they want it to be 18 feet, that maybe I can't get 18 footers and I'm going to have to put blocking in. I'm going to have to add, I'm going to have to let in a divider. All cost time, all cost money. Maybe there's some additional waste that I'm paying for. So I need to account for all of these things in the job. And I'm using this budget, this spreadsheet, in order to estimate this. Anything that I'm unsure of, again, I'm making a note. It's in bright red font, and then I'm confirming it with the client, or I'm making a note. I'm writing spec at times for spec that are not provided on the plans. Like, for example, the concrete, they did not spec a reinforcement. So are we going to use fiberglass reinforced concrete? Are we going to use welded wire fabric? Are we going to use both? What is that? So I had my mason price it and write a spec that was not on the plans, just to make sure that we're covered. If we use it, we use it. Great. If we don't, my client can get credited back the cost, but we'll submit it and we'll price it with a spec. So there's no secret to doing this. There's no secret to doing this quickly. You can have, right, if you're a big enough company and you've done enough of this work, you can have cost codes, you can have formulas, you can have square footage costs, but it's all still made up. It's made up. You're guessing what the weather's going to like. You're guessing if you're going to hit traffic. You're guessing how much you're going to get done every day. I've said this before, but if I told you I need you to go to the grocery store and I need you to pick up a loaf of bread, 6 cans of chicken soup, 2 bananas, I need you to get a 1/4 pound of turkey and a 1/2 pound of American cheese from the deli counter, and then 2 boxes of pasta. And It's a mile and a half away. I need you to go there. I need you to pick all that stuff up. I need you to check out with it, load your car, and come back. You're going to guess how long that's going to take. You know exactly where the store is. You know exactly where everything is in there. But what if you hit traffic? What if you don't hit the lights right? What if it's raining and you need to run your stuff out? You need to cover it with an umbrella. You need to pack your bags up differently. What if the deli line just has an extremely long customer line at that point? You're never going to be able to give me an accurate assessment. You can say, hey, this might take 45 minutes. It might take an hour and a half, but I don't know until I start shopping. Now, you have clients who expect you to be able to create a project on an existing building or a new build that's going to take 12 months and guess exactly how long that's going to take, but you can't tell me how long it's going to take to make a 45-minute trip to the grocery store. There's too many variables to be able to accurately assess how long each job is going to take. Every job's different. Every job site's different. Access to every job, where you can park, how many steps you have to your work site are different. Each and every job is a unique set of circumstances, and you just cannot accurately gauge that. So it's your job with your estimates to create a story, to create a budget, to create a scope, to create a spec that meets your client's needs. And again, is that they want to get this done before Christmas? Do they not care about how much it costs? Is it that they just want it to be the best project ever? And if it takes 2 months longer, they don't care because they only want to do this once. This is their forever home and they'd rather have it be done right. Or is it they do not want to spend a dime over $100,000 on this renovation and nothing else matters to them? They don't care how long it takes. They don't care if it's quick. They don't care if it's slow. They don't really even care about the quality. They just are not willing to spend more than $100,000. So you need to create your budget. You need to create your schedule and your scope according to what that client hired you for, what their needs are, and what their program is. Every time it's going to be different. So create yourself this budget. Get design in place, hire an architect, hire an interior designer, hire an engineer, have something that you can create a spec, that you can perform takeoffs, that there's something that you're bidding that's not just this verbal scope or Pinterest board in somebody's mind. It could be the most preliminary drawings ever, but at least if you have drawings, you can then say, based on these drawings, I'm making the assumption that we're going to be putting up 18 square of siding. That's what I'm seeing. I only have a floor plan, so I can't exactly tell you. I don't have all the elevations I need, but this is what I'm basing this price off of. So when you go to do the work and something changes, or they didn't show you that there was this complicated detail on the exterior of the house or the rakes or the fascias, and it's going to take 2x the amount of time, you're protecting yourself. You're giving yourself a leg to stand on there. So write the scope for yourself if you don't have it. Bring in design. There's no shortcut to this. This is why I charge people for pre-construction. Nick and I have had a pre-construction course for a couple of years now that we've really tailored to help people understand how to do this and how to get paid for this aspect of the job. If you're interested in that, reach out, shoot me an email, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. I can send you a sales page for that to check out what that is. It includes all of this stuff in it, but it's just so important to understand how to explicitly carry all of these costs and communicate them to your clients and ensure that you're protecting them, that you're protecting yourself, and that you're creating a realistic budget to be able to meet their needs and their program. So get your design in place, get pre-construction in place, start getting paid for all of this due diligence out up front, and serve as a consultant to provide your clients with this service. Make sure that your budget is accurate. Don't constantly sharpen your pencil to create a more appealing budget for these people. Create an accurate budget. I've sent emails to clients where it's like, hey, listen, I'm not looking to create an inexpensive budget for you. I'm trying to create one that's accurate, that I feel I can get you what you want. And if this isn't what you want, if this is more than what you want, or if I'm missing the mark, tell me what your needs are so that I can create a budget that suits those needs. But it's going to be different based on what your needs are. Every single job's going to be. The kitchen that I do for you is going to be different than the kitchen somebody else, even if they were in the same house, because what you need in a kitchen and what's important to you is different than what's important to somebody else. And that always affects price because it affects time, because it affects effort, because it affects labor, it affects materials, everything else. So really take your time doing this. That's why it's so critical to get paid for it up front. But you have to create the budget. You have to create the scope. And there's no secret to going through and doing this. The only secret is there are no secrets. The only other secret is that you're still making it up. I make it up every single time that I do it. I'm guessing. I'm trying to create the most realistic, accurate depiction of what I think needs to happen. And the goal is that not every single number is going to be 100% accurate, but when you add them all up, it's going to give me the greatest chance to execute the project the way that you want it to be done based on your needs and the budget that we created for that. So hopefully this gives you guys and girls a little bit of insight as to what my estimating process looks like, how I'm bidding jobs, how I'm putting together budgets for jobs. And it was all really brought on by going through this YouTube page and going through some comments, because Dave said, hey, you're dropping the ball on the YouTube channel. You're not answering the questions. And I went through and I was looking at him. I was like, this is such a great point. And I haven't spoken about this recently. And then again, my consulting call this morning was talking about how I'm tracking costs, how I'm creating budgets, how I'm ensuring that I'm creating accurate budgets and getting paid upfront for that. And I figured it'd be a good opportunity to hop on here and talk some business with all of you. It's been a minute. If you're interested in the pre-construction course, if you're interested in any of our other courses, shoot me an email, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. If you want to hop on a consulting call with me to dive into your business, to ask me questions, to discuss what I do in business, how I make money as a small self-performing contractor, shoot me an email, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. Lastly, we're getting down to the wire here for the Contractor Coalition Summit that is coming up in Chicago. We are really like, it's the last little bit. I was just on a call this morning with the entire team. Let me put this in Contractor. I need somebody who, an associate. What do they call when the podcasters have somebody who just looks up all the stuff in the computer for them so they don't have to do it? November 7th through the 10th in Chicago. We're getting down to the wire. I believe we were on the phone and we were going to give it about one more week worth of sales until we completely shut down the door. So it might just be a couple of days. I spoke about this last time, that the goal for me is to get more smaller owner operators, more small self-performers in to experience these events. And obviously it's an expensive event. I do not want this to be reserved only for the upper echelon, top tier custom home builders where they feel they can bury this number of the cost of this event into their business and it's attainable for them. I want this to be something that smaller contractors, subcontractors, smaller builders, remodelers with lower numbers in sales can afford. And I want to try and get as many of you there as possible. So you have a couple of days to do that. I'm willing to offer something that's way more attainable and something that's way more affordable and have a conversation with you guys about that for this event. This isn't for everyone who's attending this. This is for people who really want to attend this, who just may not have the means to do it right now. So if you shoot me an email, we can have a conversation about what that might look like for you and how I might be able to make that happen for you. But we're getting down to the wire here. So shoot me an email if you are curious or interested in that, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. And I will catch you all next week. As always, thanks for everything. Keep the YouTube comments coming, and I'll do a better job of getting to them. I will talk to all of you very soon. Thanks.